Welcome back to Growing Money with Sean Trace. I've got a really interesting guest with me today. Now, would you like to tell people who you are and a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Teddy. I'm a money coach. Really, what that means is I help people overcome their overspending habits and things like that. My background is in social work, actually. So addiction recovery, mental health, trauma. And so I take a lot of that practice into personal finance. And so it's a little different twist instead of taking the very numbers oriented route of here's your budget, here's your money plan, and all this stuff. It's more so let's understand the why behind your spending and if there's any, habits, addictions, and things like that that feed into, the spending cycles. Really uncovering that and doing a lot more self-discovery, not quite like woo-woo, like, what do you call it? I'm missing the word, but
Like a
it's,
hypnosis or something?
yeah, it's not like any magical anything. It's just uncovering a lot of the patterns that are subconscious to us and in a really like practical way. So,
Hey,
yeah.
this has been a trend that and this is something I've been talking to. It's been more of a trend on the podcast lately, talking to people about the psychology of money, about the mental side of it, because what you pointed out, and one of the things too, my mom is a licensed professional counselor, and so I grew up with really thinking about how we work, how we operate, and she works a lot with cognitive behavioral therapy. And she
Yeah.
always would have these really great checklists. If you got something that you needed to accomplish, she would give you a checklist for that, and or some type of activity that you could work through for it. And it always was like more easily grasped for me, that framing, but yet, I love my parents, didn't grow up with financial education. And so this is why, again, I started this podcast, because I'm trying to learn this stuff now. And it's really something that I'm trying to inform myself. I would love to apply for, Dave Ramsey or something, but I'm not an expert. Like literally, I am like your just average guy who's going, I want to learn this. And that's the cool part. I think people can. But like you said, sometimes we have these spaces that we just aren't aware of. Let me get an example. I was doing yoga the other day, and I was stretching down toward my toes. And there was a moment where I'm stretching and looking at my leg, and I was just like, you know what? I've never really looked at that part of my leg. And as I get more flexible, I start and lean a little bit farther forward, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know my toes looked like that. The same thing happens with our money space. We are not as flexible. We are not as versed in it. And then as we start getting closer, we start going, oh, wow, I didn't know my checking looked like that. I didn't know my spending habits looked like that. But it's areas that we just don't look at. And it leaves us vulnerable, I would say. So, yeah, preaching to the choir, man.
Yeah, I think that was a really good way of putting it because a lot of our spending habits and stuff, I say we because I'm a victim of it. Even still, like no one's perfect, but this like complacent spending where we're just like,
Yeah.
oh, it's fine. Like I'll just spend a little bit here, a little bit there. And despite having all like the financial knowledge and even all the psychology knowledge, it's sometimes easy to just be like, let me set that aside and just be human and buy
Yeah.
this thing. And then, yeah, the thing that keeps me on track though is looking in that mirror, essentially being the budget, right? Or the spending tracker and saying, ah, shoot, I spent $500 on useless stuff, things like
Yeah.
that. But yeah.
I was talking to my daughter today about this with social media, and we were looking at investments. I've been one of the things too is my wife and I, we send our daughter to school, but then I'm trying to educate her outside of school, and there's different areas of things that I'm trying to educate her on. One of them is we are listening to. I asked ChatGPT to give me like 300 of the best songs ever from all different genres. So we're doing a music appreciation, which is kind of awesome, and she's loving it. We're doing reading where she's sitting and reading, and we're doing a education of math and finance. And so I'm teaching her really basic business concepts. What is a red ocean? What's a blue ocean? What is a need that is needing a solution for? What is something that people have this problem that we're looking for a solution for? What is a need versus want? All of these different things. And one of the things that I was talking to her as well about was things that are of value versus things that are not. Because, we sit there and there's so much information now out there. And especially with shorts and reels, there's just stuff popping up that is taking up
Yeah.
brain space, taking up time. And in that area, not going to dive into the strengths and weaknesses of social media, but what I pointed out to her is that the majority of that stuff is not needed. It's information that's interesting. Wow. So that is what Ryan Reynolds was wearing today. Cool. That was his outfit. I actually follow Ryan Reynolds. I love the stuff he puts out, and I love following him on LinkedIn and listening to what he's some of the concepts that his company is doing around the marketing space. It's really interesting. But what he wore today, probably not that important for me for my long-term information.
Yeah.
And yet we will spend money on things that are the equivalent of that. I can see it with social media. I can see it with other things that I'm putting my energy into. But, I am cleaning out my daughter's room. She's getting older. And we've gone through so many of the toys that we're looking at that have not been played with, that have not been touched, that were,
Absolutely.
and some of them were expensive, and it's interesting that some of them were valuable. We went through and what toys, the Legos, man, Legos are expensive, but we have replayed with Legos a million different times over. When a build gets old, well, we refresh it. So, that one I see having value, but there are things. And there's one of these little types of dolls that they come in like an egg and you don't even know what you're getting. And the egg is like $20. And then you crack the egg open and it's some really cheap plastic doll that has these clothes that you can, and not even put on. It's like clip on, and those get played with twice. And I was just like, and I was pointing out like, what a wasteful spending thing. And we all have those things, with kids, it's really evident. Like you can sit there and go, wow, what a waste. But as adults, we have those same things, toys or whatever they might be, that are taking up space that we don't realize.
Yeah, because like along the same lines, so when it comes to what I do as a money coach, I kind of operate on this pillar of financial wellness. And it comes from this idea of like being well with our money, adding value with whatever resources we have. I've met so many people who love their life on $60,000 a year, and I see people who hate their life on $250,000. Not necessarily because like the money makes it bad or anything. It's just that they don't know how to spend. And the reason why,
Yeah.
so like my own history with money, I grew up the later part of my teenage years with my dad. And so he ingrained a lot of like money principles on like how to save money, put it away in a CD or things like this. Very conservative when it comes to money. Just like hold on to it as much as you can. You don't need to spend it on anything. And so that's how I grew up. And I always was like very nerdy with money, very like, I don't need to spend and this and that. But then entering in a relationship, I realized not everyone thinks like that.
Yeah.
And so my wife and I had countless fights about it. And she helped me realize that like money is just a tool, right? It's not something to hoard necessarily. But like being good with money doesn't look like having, thousands of dollars in the bank account. It's how do you use that income? And like you were saying, what things can we buy that add value to our life? Like experiences, certain items. And like you were saying, there are some things that cost a lot of money, but add so much value. And there are things that you can save a buck on and things like that, where it's like, oh, I didn't really need to get that thing just because it was on sale.
Yeah.
And so, like reframing that. I used to think people who were nerdy and people who saved money were better than the people who were like free spirited and spend money. That, oh, like these type of people are better with money. But I thought I was good with money, but the ironic thing is my wife, who's the free spirit, the spender, she's actually the one that got us on a budget. Because being my prideful self, I was like, I don't need a budget. I save money, all this stuff. But no, I actually spent quite a bit of money on like things that I don't even remember. I'm like, oh, I spent $50 on this thing. I don't even remember buying that. Even though generally I'm like, let me get a deal on this and that. But yeah, learning how to spend really changed my whole view of like how money works, right? How does it add value to our lives?
You're spot on, and it's interesting. I never thought about it that way too. But you think about like, those. All I'm a big, huge fantasy fan, and I love The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, and the dragon sitting on the gold, and the gold's doing nothing. It's not increasing in value. I mean, well, it is probably. There's probably also gold increases in value in that kingdom as well. But I mean, it's just sitting there, and yet, if there was a movement, then value can be created. Like, trade. That's the beauty of trade. That's why countries buy and sell goods, because we want to increase the overall growth of our economy and such. And it's same for me. I bought a new little camera here. I got the little DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and it was after a lot of debate, and I was like, it was about $700, but it was like, for me, for what I do, for my work, it was a huge, huge, great buy, because
Yeah.
it's small, it has value, and already in one use of it last night, it earned its money back, and it was just like right there. You can be buying things, and it's not about not spending. It's about spending smart. It's about thinking about
Exactly.
where you're putting your money, and thinking about, is this something that's going to give me a return? Like, if I can buy, this camera, well, it's going to, over the life of it, provide me with a return on income,
Hmm.
money coming back in. But, maybe I say, hey, let's go buy a fourth dog. First of all, I probably should be adopting, but, you go, I'm going to go buy a designer, you know, uh, Cocker poodle, whatever it is, and you bring it home, and that dog provides you love and care, but it's your fourth dog, man. It might be a
Yeah.
bit excessive, or, I grew up with horses, but you know what, dude, I'm not buying a horse because it's so expensive, and like, unless you
Yeah.
are a cowboy or you have something like that, it's not a financially sound decision at this point in time. Back in the 1800s, sure, it should, like your car, provide you with something. But these purchases that are providing value. What brings you value in your life? And sometimes, and
Hmm.
I have to remember this, and this is something my wife taught me, is that sometimes value can be provided from joy. And so I also have to remember that there are, we went out and we had a nice dinner last night with family, and that bonding time was a time, money well spent.
Yeah, absolutely. And I bring in a lot of kind of like weight loss principles into personal finance, not because it like
That's
has to
awesome.
do with anything social worky, but like my own journey, right? And in the same way that people have meal plans or like
Yeah.
calories budgeted and protein goals and things like that, very much the same with like I'm a firm believer of just like whatever diet works for you, like stick to it. And same thing with budgeting. Like if you have, a 3,000 calorie diet and you're eating the healthy foods, but you still have room in the budget for, a cookie or something that actually gives you joy,
Right.
then like spend, like use that, right? And me personally, I've always like wasted my calories on chips and bread and all this stuff that I'm like, I eat it because it's there, but then
Hmm.
obviously I feel the consequences of that. But like going through the weight loss journey, I'm like I eat my high protein, I do all these right things, and I still have room. So let me enjoy and
Yeah.
get the little motivation that I get from those little treats. And same thing with money. Um, the phrase I use with my clients, it's like if you learn how to save on the things that don't add value to your life, then you can spend on things that do add value. You can take the trip. You can get a nicer car or a nicer phone or whatever. Like pretty much almost exactly the same example. So the camera I'm using, it's the most I've ever spent on any like electronic equipment for the business and stuff. And it's a Sony ZV-1F, and it was like I got it on a deal for like 400 something, and I was like, dang, that's a lot of money, and I'm only gonna record videos with this, but it's I mean even like the intangible value that is added. One, like the video quality is much better. But two, like me carrying it around when I was on my trip to Ramsey Solutions opened up conversations that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And I met this
Yeah.
one finance content creator about the same age. I recognized him, but I didn't know why. And he was like, I struck up a conversation. Well, actually, he struck up the conversation with me. He was like, "Hey, you record videos and stuff?" And I was like downplaying. I'm like, "Yeah, I'm like aspiring to be a YouTuber or whatever." And we just started talking. And I was like, "Hey, can I get your phone number?" He was like, "Well, here's my Instagram." 'Cause I know people can be iffy about giving phone numbers. And he's like, just type in this name. And then he's got like hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, hundreds of thousands on TikTok and Instagram. I'm like, I would have never known like his humility and all this
Yep.
stuff. But that opened up doors that I didn't even realize. And bonus, I figured out how to use this camera as a webcam, so now it looks even better than my janky $30
It's awesome.
Lenovo webcam. And so like it's added so much value, intangible and tangible value to the business. And I got that money because whenever I was like upgrading my phone, I'm like, I need a decent phone, right? But I didn't have to be
Yeah.
the newest phone. And so I got this, it's like 3 or 4 years old, refurbished. I saved like, instead of spending 1,000 or 1,500 on a new phone, it was like $300 and it works
Yep.
perfectly fine. Same thing with my laptop, same thing with just all these other things of, yeah, I don't really care if it's the newest
Yeah.
phone. I just want something that works and has a lot of storage. And so that I can spend on things like this camera or, like even just clothing if I need something that's a little better. I haven't really spent much on clothing though. There's a lot of great finds at the thrift store.
Right.
But
Well, and I
yeah.
think that one of the things that you're pointing out, and this is something I was talking to my daughter about, is just being informed. Like for a long time, especially with phones, I think phones are a great example because everyone wants the newest, the
Mhm.
nicest, and I don't get the newest, the nicest because I start looking at specs. I start looking at what it can do, and I start looking at, like for me, I was looking at the newest iPhone and I was looking at Samsung. One of the things I love is I love being able to add additional storage to my phone. So I love a phone that lets me put in an extra SD card because I can just pop that
Yeah.
out and in for when I'm recording. I love something that is cross compatible with different devices. I love being able to sync up certain things, and I got this DJI to replace the camera feature for when I'm going out shooting because I don't like having to have a phone on a gimbal, and
Mhm.
I'm worried that someone's going to snag it or something or try to steal it or there's a host of other things. And I think if you can be informed about what your needs are and finding the right tool for that, then it's much better than just being like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. But we can go for days on that. I want to ask you this question. How
Yeah.
does financial stress contribute to burnout for professionals? Because this is something that we had chatted about before we were getting started
Mhm.
on this question. And you talk about burnout with professionals. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so I see it a lot because I'm in like the helping profession space. And yeah, there's burnout in all areas, but the one I understand the most is helping professions. So social services, mental health, education, healthcare, like those kind of areas. The reason why I see a lot of burnout with like my clients and just my peers, it's because they're doing work that they know they love, right? People don't just go into these
Yeah.
fields because it's going to make a lot of money. There's like very few like positions in those fields that make good money. But like the emotional weight of a lot of the work that we do, it's heavy. And the thing that makes it really hard is that we're carrying a lot of this stress from our clients, on our workload, but also we're people too, right? We have
Yeah.
relationship problems, we have family problems, and we have financial problems. And
Hmm.
the connection between that personal and professional life is money, right? Our
Yeah.
jobs pay the bills. And a lot of people that get into these fields, majority of them aren't financially savvy or even numbers oriented. And so I see all the time they're like dealing with student loans. They're just buying the newest car when they clearly can't afford it, right? They're living paycheck to paycheck.
Yeah.
And I mean, countless times, I mean, even for me, where I would be in my work. I work in child welfare. I used to do the more intense side of it, but I'm just like working with these families and listening on what they're going through, their trauma, and thinking like I have issues at home I'm worried about, and like I'm getting the secondary trauma from my clients. I'm getting the stress of meeting all these policy guidelines for my supervisor. And then I got this stressful stuff of, oh, shoot, this bill's coming out. Or, oh, man, I have this money fight with my wife that's been going on for months. Things like that. And it's like just wanting to take control of something and like, I have to hold on to this job, but I lose that passion and that they call it compassion fatigue. And so that's kind of one of those early signs of burnout, especially in the helping fields. And so a lot of times when people have the margin with their money to invest in themselves through like counseling or just to take a step back from work and afford time off, even if it's not paid, like that can have such profound impacts on being able to show up. The tagline I use for my business is that I help people take control of their money to be their best selves at home and at work. And when you don't have this financial stress, you can communicate better with your spouse. You're not at each other's neck all the time, and you can find work that you truly like, and you're not just doing a job for a paycheck or whatever. So
100%.
yeah, it's this whole financial wellness thing going in a loop of control your money, and then by default, your job satisfaction will be a lot better. And if it's not, then you can actually branch out and find jobs that do matter more. One of the clients I worked with, she came to me initially because she was just overwhelmed by her debt. She does great work as an attorney, and she definitely doesn't get paid as much as like attorneys in the private sector. So probably gets paid, about half or a third of what private attorneys do. She loves her job, loves the flexibility, and is just overwhelmed with this debt, overwhelmed with student loans and spending. And she's like, I just need help with my finances. And we actually uncovered that what she needed more help with was the burnout side of things. And we're like, hey, we can clean up all this financial stuff pretty quickly. Like, it's okay to step away from your job, be there when you come back. And we had this whole plan that, she can pay off all of her debt in a private sector job within like 2 years, and because she would double or triple her income. And we're going through the process of applying for these jobs and looking into family law or whatever. And then throughout the process, she's getting these job offers, and she's like, I don't know if I can take them because I realize there's so much value in the work I do. And that whole process of getting the finances in order, seeing that she can still pay off the debt and all that stuff in her current job, she was like, she rediscovered that passion and was like, I didn't realize how much I was spending and wasting. And now that I'm dialing in all that wasteful spending, I actually have hope I can pay the stuff off. And so now she's able to better show up for her work. And it's intense work, more intense than the stuff I even saw. And clearly has a passion for it. Like that true heart of what you'd want in a public service, worker, attorney is like, she embodies that. And I'm so glad that she can still find that passion while handling her finances. And so either plan would have worked, but
Yeah.
doing like selling out for a job, it just would take away from her soul basically. And she's able to find a way to keep doing the work she loves and on a money plan that works for her. So I say all of that to say, right, that burnout comes from a lot of like hopelessness with our job, with our money, and just having that path of like, yeah, it's going to be a hard road, but it's still a road that I can see the end to. Oftentimes that, reignites that passion for the field.
Well, one of the things that you're pointing out too that is that's a good point. And the challenge with when we are in a financially challenging place is that simple things become huge fires. It's like if you have no water and a candle gets knocked over and it starts to burn something. Well, that small thing can become a huge thing if there's no water. But if you have water around, then you're able to put it out, right? But the challenge comes when we start getting those fires in our lives. Maybe you're burned out and you're feeling awful. Well, one of the best things you can go do is join a gym. But if your finances are not in order, you don't have the money to join a gym. if your finances are not in order, you don't have the money to look at stepping back and taking a holiday or a day off or even just a quick break. And so it is like if you can start getting control of that or becoming aware of it, and one of the things that I like that you were pointing at, I do love, something that I'm seeing and chatting with my friends about. It's one thing to control spending, which is a huge part, but you also alluded to the fact that sometimes one of the solutions is learning to make more money, finding ways to draw things in, and maybe
Yeah.
that's not always the solution, but there are different ways to go at this challenge. But talking about the overspending, because that's something that I think all of us have, how do you help people recognize their overspending habits?
Honestly, so like when I work with other helping professionals, the biggest trend I see is that we I say we because I'm guilty of it too. Like like our mask that we put on for work is as the helper, right? We want to
Yeah,
be the solution or the guide or whatever. And when it comes to like ourselves in our life, sometimes we want to take that mask off, even if we know all the
right.
mental health and all the like best practice things to do, work out, sleep, drink water, all this stuff. Like being human, we just want to take that mask off and take control
Yep.
of some other areas of our lives that we have control over, instead of playing this movie, like, or just playing this character. And
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of times that looks like using our spending as a form of control. Like, I don't feel I'm in control of my work or my family or whatever, but this money stuff, I can spend. I can buy this thing, or at least feel like I can buy it if I have a credit card or whatever. It's like I'm gonna treat myself, and so a lot of ways, that's one of the biggest trends I just see, because the work that we do is very emotionally heavy, and our lives can be emotionally heavy too. Just taking that control in our spending, it ends up being as kind of like an escapism, and that's why
Yeah.
I draw a connection between addiction and spending, because not everyone who spends a lot is addicted, but there's a lot of characteristics of avoiding negative behaviors, avoiding negative emotions, when we're shopping online. I don't know how many times I've scrolled Amazon just because I was bored and uncomfortable with just sitting with myself, or I get stressed out from some client and I'm like, oh, hey, I deserve this nicer lunch than usual.
Yep.
Things like that. And uncovering a lot of those patterns, it's not that we're just like oblivious to them. It's a lot of us don't see just the profound depth of those behaviors. And
Yep.
just even doing the work of calling it out as it is, like, you know what, I do spend whenever I'm more stressed at work, or I do spend more when I'm sleep deprived, or things like that. And yeah, recognizing those patterns is not, it's not rocket science, but it's the hard work of looking in the mirror and being like, man, I actually waste a whole bunch of money, and the culprit is me, right?
Yeah.
That first step is saying I am the problem, and that's really empowering, actually. So you're with yourself 24/7. You have the most control over your thoughts, your behaviors, your actions, and then by doing that, then you could like take a lot of that. I'm trying to think of the word. It's just empowering. You have that autonomy, right? You're not a victim of the circumstances anymore, and that itself is that sense of control. Instead of like spending the money as control, now you can like reel it back in, be like, I deserve to be financially well. I deserve to have the savings, have the investings for myself to put towards mental health, to put towards life experiences, but also pass that on to my kids. And yeah, I think it's just that idea of like, I'm worth investing in as a person is like the most financial way I can put it, of getting your finances in order is an investment in yourself, even if it doesn't have
Perfect.
tangible like money outcomes, has a lot of even spiritual outcomes, mental health, emotional, all that stuff.
I love that. And I think one of the things too is like it is a mindset shift. You know, you have to take this. You start with this, going back to your analogy about weight loss and just getting your health in order, fitness. I studied and am still studying medicine. I study Chinese medicine and acupuncture, and it's something that I studied before I took a hiatus, and I'm finishing off my studies now. Um, but doing it in a more conscious way and paying as I go type of a thing versus, you know, student loans as I did in the past. As I look at that, when we come in and get people coming in with us with health problems and health challenges, one of the things that you see is that people don't realize that certain behaviors have led to certain problems. There were things that people grew up with that I remember watching this video about I can't remember the show, but it's a famous TV show about this doctor who deals with people who are very, very, very obese, and he gives
Hmm.
them very. He's this tiny little squeaky doctor, and he gives them the like most straightforward advice that you could imagine. And I remember this one intake, and I'm not judging people where they're at. We all have places that we are not paying attention to, or where we might be blinded by our upbringing or just by things that happened in the past. But this mother and her son came in, and they were talking to them both about their habits, and like, do you drink any water? And like, well, we drink soda. Like, oh, soda water? No, no, no. We drink, you know, like different soda drinks, different soft drinks. Well, do you drink anything else? No, that's all we drink all day, but we're getting our water there. And like they were drinking like I think it was like 2 or 3 liters of soda each a day. And then unaware of the amount of sugar, they're like, well, are you eating a lot of extra sugar? No, we're not eating a ton of sugar. But they weren't aware that the foods they were eating were packed full of it, you know? And my mother-in-law has diabetes that has emerged as she's gotten older. And one of the things that I had to educate her with were hidden sugars. And it's like
Hmm.
there are these places that you are doing things, or maybe there was a tradition you had, you know, like for my wife's family's Vietnamese, and some of the family members would have the nuc mam. For people who don't know what that is, it's
Hmm.
fish sauce,
Yeah.
and they would the spoonful of sugar added to the nuc mam, and I had to sit there and go, you know, that is probably not a good action for you to do. Well, it makes it taste better, and it's giving you additional problems down the road. Now, and if we, and I think this is interesting because you know here is you were preaching to the choir earlier. Here's my workout plan for today. This is my I printed it up, typed it out. It's got all my checklists on there. I know what I need to do. And it's really easy to make up workouts. It's really easy to make up meal plans, but we kind of don't have that same, like, can you imagine if, you know, there are gyms across the country. What if we had, you know, what if one of the leaders in the field said, hey, you know what, we need to open financial centers across the country that you go in and you get your financial workout, you go in and you get, well, how much fiscally more responsible would our entire world be if we had this trend? You know, it's not flashy. There's not something that you can, you know, it's not like, yeah, hey, look at my swole, you know, because generally the behaviors that are the flexes financially are not good financial practices. You know what I mean? And so, you know,
Hmm.
it's like you can go into a workout and come out and, you know, wear an outfit that makes you look more, you know, more swole or whatever, you know, but like financially, the practices that might be actually growing your wealth might be the practices that don't show anything to anyone. You know, I have a family member that is ridiculously wealthy, and this person became wealthy by over their long career just putting small amounts of money into savings, into the stock market, and then just making really smart moves the whole way and counting coupons. I remember when this family member would go shopping, they would be the coupons and everyone would laugh at them. And driving, like, went to visit them recently, and their beautiful, beautiful house in a beautiful, beautiful location that I could only dream of at this moment in time in my life. And they're driving around in a little Toyota, and it's like, it's a simple minivan kind of crossover sedan. And my daughter, when we went and visited them, and I had talked about them being very wealthy, she's like, "This isn't a rich people car." And I said, "That's where you're wrong. This is a rich people car. The people that you see
Yeah.
driving those expensive cars often are not rich. But this is a rich person car because they're smart with their money. Their money is away working for them." And then my daughter was like,
Hmm.
mind blown. And I was like, that's why they're able to
Exactly.
afford. They have three nice, beautiful houses in beautiful locations that are assets that are, working for them. And so again, it's that mindset shift from debt, from flashy, to creating choices that lead you to true freedom. And that doesn't, and like one thing that you said earlier, financial freedom could be making 60K a year, but having your money set up in a way that's working for you. And
Hmm.
you might not be financially free at 500,000 a year. You could be in a situation that still isn't beneficial to you. It's not about the money, it's about the mindset and the choices.
Yeah, and like kind of going back to that, like our perception of what wealth looks like. So, I mean, you see this book right here, Babysit Millionaire. What I
Yep.
find really interesting, Ramsey Solutions, like, well, for those of you who don't know who Dave Ramsey is, he's like the goat of like personal finance. He's had his company for like 30 plus years and really democratized a lot of like personal finance knowledge and information. And a few years ago, I forget exactly when it was, but they did like the largest study of millionaires in the US. And what they found is that it's not what they're not driving a Lamborghini or like high end cars and these
Yeah.
mansions. Like a person with $1 million net worth has got their two cars, their Corolla and their, Toyota Sienna or something. And they've just got, your regular three bed, two, three bed, two bath house, or they're get like 300, 400,000 in their 401k or whatever it is. Like this idea of millionaire, it I mean, in a lot of ways, if you're not financially savvy or just like responsible with your money, it can be hard to attain. But the actual process is fairly simple. I think if you like put away $300 or $400 a month from when you're 25 until you're 60, that alone will, from the compound interest, will be like $1 million. But that net worth
Yep.
doesn't just come from a retirement account. You have the house, you have all these other things. But yeah, the reason why I love this book is the process to do that is surprisingly simple. But the hardest part is the actual practice. And I tell people all the time, I can help you make a budget, but the budget's not your problem, right? You got to learn to stick to the budget. You have
Yeah.
29 other days of the month and 23 other hours to take this budgeting session and actually stick to it. And yeah, getting just the numbers, like you were saying, it's easy to come up with the workouts. It's easy to come up with like the numbers for groceries or whatever. But the true challenge is putting it into practice and doing the hard work of saying no to ourselves now so that we can say yes later. Like with our health, I mean,
Right.
I'm like actively working on it. So it's like top of mind. And, I would just say yes, like, oh, free food. Let me get some. Oh,
Right.
someone's inviting me to a restaurant and I want to eat. I'll just eat, eat, eat. And even though I have food at home and then I'm buying chips and all this stuff, but then I like there's a hangover in a sense afterwards.
Yeah.
Just like there's a spending hangover, just being like, oh man, now I got to pay off the mistakes I did back then. But yeah, really, all in all, looping back to what wealth looks like you said, like it could be a 10, 15-year old car. It's not the newest,
Yeah.
not the greatest, but it's paid in cash. Or,
100%.
the house is not the flashiest, like $500,000 home, but maybe just a $250,000, $300,000 townhouse. And obviously, it looks different for where you are in the States or where you are in the world. But yeah, like this idea of wealth, reframing not only how attainable it is, but also what it truly looks like. I think that's one of the things that a lot of us lack, especially younger generations. I'm trying to remember what the study was, but there was like high schoolers, and I'm gonna botch this quite a bit, But the general principle is that like a lot of these high schoolers were asked, when do they want to become a millionaire by? Like, what are their expectations? And most of them, I think on average, said they wanted to be a millionaire by 25. Like, you got 7 years from when you graduate high school to have $1 million net worth. That's insane. And what their vision of millionaire looks like, the nice cars, the nice clothes, and all this stuff. But also their expectations for their earning potential. I want to graduate college making $150,000 a year. Well, sorry, that's not very realistic unless you're in certain professions, right? And it's this whole idea, especially the things we see, and we're getting these horse blinders of like all these highlight reels of people's lives and their wins and successes, and thinking that that's what their life looks like 100% of the time, but it's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I don't want to just pick on the younger crowd because the older crowd too, like
100%.
it does not discriminate at all.
One of the things that you pointed out, and I think that I really love, and I want to circle back on Dave Ramsey and then come into the second point. But one of the things I love about the book Baby Steps is that you literally are. Yesterday we were watching a movie, my daughter and I, and someone referenced the word stepping stones. But it wasn't just like stepping stones that were at like literal stepping stones across a river, but it was, like talking about something being a stepping stone as you move forward. And my daughter was like, well, what's stepping stones? And I showed her the picture of true stepping stones across a river. And I said, often when we have a goal, like crossing a big river, the water's flowing, it's a little dangerous. You can't sit there and start focusing on what's happening on the other side of the river. You have to sit there and go, all right, what place am I in this river? Because it is a dangerous situation until you are across the river to safety. And I mean, for our, sake, that other side of the river would be the financial freedom. While you are crossing the river, you have certain things that you need to do. And as I'm working myself through the baby steps that Dave Ramsey has in his book, I see the dangers at each place. If you have, I think his first thing is save $1,000, and then step 2 is going to be pay off your debt. Step 3 is, I think, save more. If you don't have some type of cash float, then any type of thing comes along, you're going to have danger. But then if you don't pay down that debt, then you've got those high interest credit cards that are just draining away. It really is this mindset thing. And what I love about the technique, and what I love about it, whether it's Dave Ramsey's steps or someone else's, what I think is so important, so interesting, is that it makes things attainable. Like, let's imagine this. And this is why I love the rise of AI, because I hope that AI allows us to see more of the steps. So you go, and those high school students that say, I want to be a millionaire by 25. Granted, probably pretty unlikely to have it that fast. But what if you could present someone with the baby steps going, you know what? It might not be 25, but if you follow these steps, you will be a millionaire eventually, guaranteed. What? There are steps to do that? Yes. And it might not look the same for everyone, but there are steps to creating a successful business. There are steps to becoming successful in your career, because again, there might be a myriad of different ways that they do that. Maybe they come up and go the entrepreneurial route. Maybe they decide to get into a very lucrative profession. Maybe, whatever that might be, underwater welding. I mean, goodness gracious knows, I don't know what are these high value professions, but they're out there. I think underwater welding is one like the highest risk, but also like a ridiculously high paying trade job.
Yeah.
But whatever it might be, having that path that you can follow and having the guides along the way is so beautiful, and that's why I love that book, because and I love the idea of democratizing personal finance, because whenever I tried to read personal finance books, it was always like, now I'm going to tell you how to invest your $500,000 that you already have. And I'm like, wow, there must be a lot of people sitting around with $500K in the bank, but none of my friends have that. And I mean, I'm not saying that I'm hating on my friends, but there's a couple of my friends that have that. And it's like this one person, it was like, I was scrolling through LinkedIn. It's like, how to retire off $1 million. I was like, you've got $1 million right now. That's great for you, man. But like, that's not where a lot of people are at. And I think that, and certainly we all want to be there, but there's not everyone has that information yet. And a lot of the financial podcasts as well that I listen to, there's kind of this approach of, certainly some people are here, but everyone needs financial information. Everyone needs financial advice. And, I listen to investment podcasts, even though I don't have the capital right now to put into that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it's interesting and I want to inform myself, and it's about getting that information. But it's beautiful. I love what Dave Ramsey's done and kind of made this system accessible, because at any step across the river, if you are on the paying down your debt, stepping stone, all right, where are the resources for you to find out about that? What are the different methods? The avalanche versus the snowball. And like, okay, you're paying down debt. You've got these two. You're saving money. Well, what should you save? Now, how can budgeting help people focus their money on what matters for them?
Yeah, like, man, and it really ties back to kind of what I was saying earlier, and like you were saying with the workout plan, the budget itself, whether it's a piece of paper or an app, is just that. It's a plan. But the true challenge is putting that plan into action in a way that fits your lifestyle, that's not necessarily like white knuckling your way every month. But it really is one of those like self-reflective things. So I lead Financial Peace University. It's the course through Dave Ramsey. For those of you who don't know, it's a huge value add. Like, what you get for $80 is insane, especially if you implement it. But what she was saying one of the classes, she was like, I was doing my budget for the first time, and it was almost like uncovering a lot of stuff within myself, like the self-discovery stuff. So the budget has a very tangible outcome of, okay, if I stick to, $600 a month for groceries instead of the $1,500 I was spending on food, that tangibly has $900 I can put somewhere else in savings, in paying off my debt faster and things like that. But yeah, it really is holding that mirror up and seeing like, where are all, I don't want to call them like imperfections or defects, but that's like, where's all of our money going? Like, actually taking a look of, we have the budget, but to stick to it, we have to track our spending. And that tracking itself, even if you don't consciously make an effort to save money, just seeing the money come out happens like it. And I've seen this a lot with weight loss. Like, simply weighing myself every day makes me more aware of my eating habits, and then by default I'm losing weight even if I'm not on any particular diet. Same thing with tracking your expenses, because the budget is a plan, but the tracking is really that implementation and seeing, oh man, like I just swipe a card when something's $50, but now I actually see that $50 chunk getting taken out of that grocery budget or whatever. And the real danger, and this is like definitely not knocking on any debit, credit cards or anything like that, but a lot of these financial institutions do like tons of market research on what they call like reducing the friction of purchasing, right? That's why we have tap to pay cards and on our phone and all this stuff, because those just psychologically make it easier to spend and we don't feel the pain. But by doing the budget, by actually being mindful of those areas, I don't want to say you're experiencing the pain necessarily, but you're experiencing the reality of this money is coming from somewhere, right? Whether it's a credit card, you're going to feel that when the bill comes, or if it's a debit card or cash, you can see it right away. But yeah, like, it's a huge awareness practice to make it a regular thing, very much like exercise. Even if it's a 5-minute, 10-minute exercise a day, it doesn't have to be this huge overhaul of let me go down every line item and calculate all this like mental math stuff, but just simply like doing the stuff that you can stick to, which is just tracking your spending itself. Has profound impacts. Like, and the equivalent in the exercise world is like, everyone thinks to lose weight you need to do these 2-hour-long workouts and these crash diets, but if you just cut out a lot of the snacks and just go on a 10-minute walk a day, insane the kind of progress you can make. And
Yeah.
so it's not this scary thing. Like it's really the simple changes, and those simple changes are the ones that you can actually stick to, right?
Right. I had I still tutor children living overseas. I still tutor kids part time, just as a side hustle. And I had one student that I was putting a lot of time into, and I what I realized is that the time that I was taking to tutor this child was taking away from my ability to tutor and teach my own. And so it wasn't that the time was poorly spent. It wasn't that it was a bad choice. I was making money off of it. But I had this conversation with my wife saying, you know what? Every single second that I spend with this other kid, I don't have that same time with my daughter. So I stepped back from that and I said, you know, I wish you guys well, introduced them to someone new. And now I've been doing the same thing that I was doing for them with my own kid. And it's not that one thing is better than another. When we're spending and I'm buying this versus this, it's not that one thing is necessarily better, but it is, again, focusing on what matters. For me, what really matters is not making sure that that other person's child is successful, well-adjusted, and has all this information they need for life. It's making sure that my child has that information and that I can bestow that. And so I think that, with budgeting, as we help people focus their money on what matters, part of it is just knowing what matters to you and being aware of it, because it might be going here when really you prefer for it to be here, and I mean, and that can be a career too. And I think that that plays into, as people start getting on top of their finances and start getting that personal power back, there is this ability to start moving toward more fulfilling work, start moving in a place and in a direction that is more of what they want to be. Maybe you've been doing this job because you have to, but maybe when you get your finances in order, you realize, you know what would really fulfill you would be this job, but you don't have the ability and freedom to do that when you're stuck on this grind.
Yeah, like I mean that is my story. So before I got into social work, I was in nursing school, and yeah, nurses aren't known for making a lot of money, but there's a lot of potential to make money, and we saw
Yeah.
that from COVID with like travel nursing and stuff. But my plan out of high school, I was getting my degree early, all this stuff. I was doing all the financially smart decisions with getting my degree. And I was going to be on track to be this ICU nurse, get my nurse anesthetist certification, which they end up making like $300,000 to $400,000 US dollars. I don't know what that is in Vietnam currency, but it's a lot of money, right?
It's a lot of
And
money, man.
yeah, and I was like, I took a step back from it, a lot of personal reasons too, of like my own journey through addiction, of like this work can make me a lot of money, but it's not truly like what I'm after, that purpose. And so going into social work, it was that life change I wanted to see and be in people's lives.
Yeah.
And I love social work, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't pay a lot. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I get paid more compared to my peers just because I've been a little more strategic with like pay increases and things like that. So like I'm getting paid probably about like 20% more than the people with my equivalent position just because they weren't as diligent with those like stair step like raises and things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm able to do that work and still enjoy life with my family and all this stuff because we're financially savvy, right? We paid off our
Yeah.
debt. We're not, financing the newest car and things like that. We bought both of our cars in cash. One of them is the beater, which is I drive, and then one of them's a nicer car that my wife drives. And yeah, I say all that to say, like, even despite not making $100,000 a year or whatever as a social worker, I can still afford getting to do my passion of financial coaching, you know, get this set up, have these conversations and really bridge
Sorry,
out.
sorry, sorry.
Um,
Alarm's going. Sorry.
no worries.
You
Like
can
really,
still, you can still focus on your
oh
passion.
yeah, like man, this whole entrepreneurial journey, I have no business background, but it's been the most fun I've ever had in a long time, right? Like getting this passion to learn how to reach people about their money problems, and then taking my experiences, my personal, professional, and all this stuff has been incredibly empowering, incredibly like hope filled, that I can see a future. Like, my goal is to make it full time doing this,
Yeah.
be a professional YouTuber or whatever, and create content. I love this podcast that you're doing. I love just all the interviews you've done, and like being able to be part of that, and build a business where I can do the work I love, and that passion and purpose,
Right.
and then ultimately get paid more, right? Nothing wrong with
Right.
getting money.
Right.
And that's one of the things I also help, especially a lot of clients that I work with. They have this limited belief with money, that if you have a lot of money, it means you're a bad person, or that you got it some kind of way that was unfair. And they're comparing wealth to like these uber billionaires. And I mean, even I personally believe those people who are billionaires, most of them like earned it. Like, they started from nothing. There are some, yeah, that were given it to them. But at the same time, the ones that were given the wealth, they actually learned how to manage it, because a lot of people squander
Yeah.
it too. That inherit a large amount of wealth, they will blow it out of the water of just buying insane stuff, and then go bankrupt. And so there's a level of respect I have for them, because especially the self-made millionaires and billionaires, like, it's a lot of work. I
It's a ton
realize
of work.
how hard business is. Like, it doesn't just come easy, and there's nothing innately wrong with earning money. Money is just a tool. It's just a transfer of currency, a transfer of value, that I'm providing a value to someone, and the trade is, money. And there's nothing right or wrong about that. And man, the amount of times I've heard the excuse of like, it's weird. It's not that they don't want to be rich. It's just that it's a fear of having money that it would make them a bad person. But money is really just an amplifier of like who we are. It just puts a fat magnifying glass of our positive traits and our negative traits. Like, they're a family member, but I'll just call him a friend. Okay. So this friend of mine, is like always looking to make more money and all this stuff, thinking that he's super diligent with what he spends, not realizing a lot of like the toxic money beliefs and behaviors he has. He's great with like numbers and stuff like this, but he also has a lot of like emotional things that he hasn't dealt with. And so with more money comes, more obvious signs of these issues. And man, like, just it is gambling addiction, but not like casino gambling. It's stock market
Mm.
gambling. And the amount of
Yeah.
money that he's lost in the stock market is insane. Like, yeah, he's never
Yeah.
taken debt to do it, but if he just put those same things into action that he preaches, or the baby steps and all this stuff, easily would have had $5 or $10 million right now. But just more money, it's not necessarily like it just made those problems bigger, those emotional issues, the mental health challenges. It just revealed that they don't just go away when you
Yeah.
have more money. It's and I say it all the time with people. It's kind of like marriage. Like, people think that when you get married, a lot of these problems go away. But no, it's an amplifier of all your defects, really.
Yeah.
And money the same way. If you're generous with a little, you end up being generous with a lot. If you end up going into debt with a little bit, if you double, triple your income, you're still gonna find a way to spend your way out of that money. It's fascinating how it works, but it's not almost, it is sad too, that yeah, kind of avoiding some of those underlying issues.
Yeah. I think that you hit the nail on the head there. Money is an amplifier, and it doesn't fix your life. It doesn't destroy your life. It makes your life more visible. And if you have problems, and I think that's the beauty of this. And I think that I hope that there will be a field that emerges someday, of financial psychologists, people who work with people on their money issues and sit there and go, how many people could benefit from money therapy, going to a
Mhm.
counselor and just talking about their money? Because, if I had all my money issues lined up and perfectly, my mental health would be a much, much better place. It's like there is a huge correlation between these two areas. And I think that as people look at that, money is not the root of all evil. Money, far from it, is a powerful tool. You hear about great people who use money in benevolent ways. And I bring this example up to my daughter. If I'm driving to work and I see a person who is in true need on the side of the road, if I have nothing of my own, what can I give? There's no ability to give if you don't have your own house in order. If you then have your things in order and you have an extra pair of shoes, then you can take your shoes and give them to this person. You can give them
Mhm.
money. You can give them whatever might be of need in that moment. But if you don't have your own things figured out, you do not have that space to provide that. But brother, I want to thank you for coming on tonight and thank you for this conversation. It has been an absolute, absolute blessing to have you here today.
Yeah, I've loved it. I mean, the way you've just like, and a lot of people, I don't know if you want to cut this out post edit, but you do a tremendous job with like that storytelling and those analogies. I'm just like, I'm gonna rewatch this and probably steal some of that. Just
I appreciate it. I
FYI,
love
I love it.
analogies.
Yeah, it's been a great, I didn't even realize that the whole hour went because we're just chopping
Right.
it up, having great conversation. Yeah, man. Like, well, the one thing I wanted to add, because you brought up the financial
Do tell.
psychology.
No, we've got
Yeah,
time.
like, uh, and it's relatively new. So a lot of the mental health professions are adding certifications for that. So, like, family therapists, licensed counselors, licensed clinical social workers, and then psychologists, they all have like a subset of financial, like the financial equivalent. So financial psychologist, financial therapist, financial counselor, financial social worker. But it is like a fairly new thing. Like and people are a lot more familiar now with like financial coaches and money coaches because there's like life coaching. There's a little more flexibility
Yeah,
with that. And so like that's what I do right now. I actually switched
that's
from
awesome.
financial coach to money coach, just a branding thing. But I could absolutely get my clinical license and do it in a setting that has that mental health component, like DSM diagnoses and how like that relates to finances. And so it's an emerging field and it's cool to be part of it. But there's a lot of like just education about finances in general, but also that mental health aspect that has to be done right to get that groundwork going. But yeah, that was kind of a one-off thing. But
Yeah, that's
man, it
awesome.
was it was really great having this conversation, Sean. I'm so glad you reached out on LinkedIn because at first I was like, "Who is this guy? Is he just like?" Like I'll be completely honest,
Spam
because
me, right?
I was like, I saw that you were in Vietnam. I was like, "Is this legit?"
Right. I know,
But then I
right?
was checking, yeah, I was checking out your content, man. It's awesome what you're doing, and can't wait to see. Whenever this is posted, I'm definitely gonna share it on my end, because having like a really candid conversation of just it's not super educational, but really going down and meeting people where they're at because we're both living it, right?
Yeah,
Even we're having the financial knowledge and we're teaching it to the people we can. It's that continuous learning and then just continuously being
yeah,
in it. Have a conversation almost like just we're at lunch, right? It's not
yeah,
always academic. It's not always this I don't. It's like a distance sometimes
yeah,
with like in academia where like they are the professional and I'm learning, but it's just like we're all here learning together, and I love
yeah.
that.
Because we're in it, and it's the steps that we take to educate ourselves. That's
Mhm.
where I feel like this podcast can be a benefit. Is I am sharing as I get my house in order, and hopefully can inspire other people to get theirs, and we can go through this journey together.